Hello gang, ChevChat21 here. Mentioned it in the last video. This will probably go in both the Danger Ranger and the vlog videos. And I've mentioned this a little bit on the Resto-Mod plans video I dropped a couple weeks back. And this is sort of the evolving plan for this truck. It's, we'll see what we get to. I'm putting feelers out right now for parts and compatibility and all that fun stuff. My plan for this truck eventually, and I've done some digging, and it looks like it shouldn't be too difficult to do, at least to keep it legal and registerable and all that fun stuff, is to do a diesel conversion on this truck. And to do that, you can do that in Pennsylvania. There's nothing that prohibits that other than you have to keep in line with federal guidelines. So if you're going to do a diesel conversion, you have to do the swap with an engine that's the same model year or newer than the vehicle that you are putting it into. That's, not that much of a problem. They did offer, I want to say in the 80s, a diesel engine in the Ranger. I believe they were using BT4s. But I'm not putting a BT4 in this. I'm putting a BHW out of a diesel Jetta, or a diesel Passat rather. The plan is to do that, and then, as I mentioned in that other one, I've got a couple options for transmissions that I'm working through. I digress. I'll loop back. So, I'm going to pull the V6 Cologne 4-liter that's in this out. I'm going to drop in a 2-liter BHW engine. And have at stock basically the same horsepower and torque numbers as the Cologne that's in here right now, and an engine that is half the displacement, and on average for a conversion like this, about twice the fuel economy. So going from 15 to 17 miles to the gallon up to 35-ish. Hey, that's great. That's going to come with some challenges, but nothing that I can't work around or work through. The next tricky bit is the transmission. Now, I talked about this a little, a couple of videos ago. I've got some options for this truck. I can either go Ford with a 5R55 series transmission, probably an E, maybe an S, which would have come, the E would have come in this truck in the 2000s. So they're around, they're available, they're plentiful. The problem with them is, and this is only a minor problem, that you only get one overdrive, and it's really a 4-speed. The 5th gear they give you is to turn the overdrive on in first. So it's first overdrive, so split shifted, 2nd, 3rd, 4th overdrive again. So that's, not necessarily a problem, but it's not the most ideal. It would work just fine. It would make some things a little easier. I'd still have to figure out some type of transmission controller, because those 5R55s are fully electronic. They do have a manual valve, I believe, but all the shifting is electronic in them. So that would require some mods for the transmission, including a standalone controller, and I'd have to replace the steering column in the truck here, so that I can run park, reverse, neutral, combo drive, overdrive, 2-1. Because the overdrive defeat is on the end of the stalk. It's not in a selected position like it is with the transmission in the truck right now. The transmission in the truck currently, it's park, reverse, neutral, overdrive, drive, 2-1. Because it's a 4-speed, fully hydraulic control transmission. There's no computers, or there might be one or two solenoids in this for like torque converter lockup, I think, which is controlled by the engine computer. It doesn't even have a standalone transmission controller, which is fine. That's all doable. The alternative option, as I mentioned in that last video, and the one that I'm heavily exploring at this point, is a transmission controller for those 5R55s. There's a handful out there, but they're few far between and almost as much money as the transmission. So, if I'm going to drop, $2,000 on a new transmission, I then got to drop $2,000 on a new controller. Less ideal. Now, that's not to say that this next option is going to be any cheaper, but the documentation's better. And that is to go with a ZF8HP series transmission, most likely a 70, or definitely a 70. What are we doing, folks? 70 series with an all-wheel drive, tail housing, and then a couple custom adapters, one for the TDI to the transmission, because I'm probably not going to be able to find one that someone already makes an adapter for in the States. There's a couple of them around, but I need to find like a 2017 or 2018 BMW M4 with an all-wheel drive package. Like, they're not the most common thing. I'm sure I can find one. Heck, if somebody's got one that they've wrapped around a tree and the transmission's good, let me know. I'd love to buy that transmission. I digress. So I'll probably need a custom, TDI to whatever transmission I end up getting adapter. And then I want to run the selectable transfer case that this truck currently has. The reason I want to keep the transfer case is because I haven't, now if someone has, and they know more than I do, please let me know, a transfer case that runs 2 high, 4 high, 4 low, that I want to know about. Because a lot of the ones that I've been seeing for transmission, or for things that ran the ZF, were less than ideal because they were always 4-wheel drive. I don't want an all-wheel drive or an always 4-wheel always on this truck. It defeats the point of what I want here. So I want to select the transfer case. I want to keep it push button or dial. I'm not particular which. I want to try to keep the cab aesthetics as close to original as possible, with some exceptions. But I like the Shiftronic mechanism that this has. So we're going to do our best to keep that, even if I've got to hodgepodge everything after it, which with the ZF I will, because Ford has a couple of small computers that run the shift mechanism and the interlocks for the transfer case. Not something that's insurmountable. A couple of relays, H-bridge configuration, and then the turbo-lambic controller can actually act as the interlocks. The other thing that I think I'll keep with the turbo-lambic is I can keep the column shifter exactly the same and then use either a custom-built set of switches and inputs or an off-the-shelf piece from something, say, a Dakota Digital gear shift position indicator, especially if I'm going to use their dash, which they do have a dash that, as near as I can tell, will fit this truck basically factory, because it's designed for the late 80s, early 90s Broncos, which use the same cluster, as far as I can tell. I got to call Dakota Digital on it. But I can use their gear shift position indicator with a couple of linkages to the column shifter and get my outputs for the transmission, for position, and for the gauge cluster for the indicator. So that'll work very nicely for me. And then I can use, the first click as my, around town setting, the second click as a, sportier shift setting, the third click as, say, a tow haul mode, and all the way down in one would be the shift setting for the four-wheel drive in low range, to tell the transmission computer that, hey, the speed sensor and the transmission speeds, the vehicle speed sensor and the transmission speed sensor are going to mismatch because I'm in low range. So, don't freak out, don't throw a code. Where do you think you're going, lady? Be aware that I'm in low, because you need to do that. Otherwise it freaks out. So, that's kind of the plan I'm leaning to. I'm talking with a couple guys about tail housing adapters right now. We'll see what I can get to. But again, if someone's got an idea for a different transfer case that's electronically shifted, let me know. I'd love to hear about it. So continuing to move back, I want to keep the Ford 8.8 that's in the rear. They're really nice axles, very well built. I don't feel the need to go up to a Ford 9-inch. That'd just be a little silly. I'm going to keep the limited slip that's in there, but I'm going to do a disc brake conversion on it. Now, the other thing I noticed is if I lose the spare tire carrier, I can put a gas tank there. These trucks in the 80s came with the option for a second rear gas tank. I think that would be really sweet to have. That'd be a fun option. It'd be a fun range extender for the truck, which, keeping the factory gas tank, which is a 20 or 25 gallon tank, you change the gas mileage up to double what it is, you're looking at almost 700 miles a stop, between fill-ups on the factory tank as it stands. That's cool. Throw another, 10 or 15 gallon tank where the spare tire carrier is. Now you're talking almost 1,000 miles between fuel stops. That's fun. Combine that with a modern deep TDI, a very fuel-efficient transmission, and, most importantly, cruise control that is very well built and well set up, functional, and now you've got a nice truck. The other thing I didn't mention about the engine is throw a stage 1.5 tune on it, or a stage 2 tune, you're probably going to lose a little bit on the fuel economy, not much. And you're going to jump the horsepower and torque numbers. I'm thinking a stage 1.5. Bump the numbers a little bit. I might lose a little on the fuel economy. Probably not. But then it's beating the factory V6 engine in this thing on torque and horsepower through a transmission with better gearing, because it's some really tall ratios up on 1 and 2 on those transmissions. You're not indirect until 6. Now you've got a really fun, drivable vehicle that's capable. You know, we're going to put a 2.5 or a 2-inch hitch on this thing too. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to do true ABS, or at least true rear wheel ABS on this. I'm thinking I'm going to get some 95 Ranger steering knuckles and put in a proper ABS kit in this as well. We'll do that just to have the ABS, but the reason I want to have it isn't so much because I need it, but it's because with that extra fuel tank in the back and the dynamic weight change from using that to load the main tank or just draw from it after the main tank is empty, that's going to cause shift in weight, which requires shift in brake pressure, which I want the ABS to handle for me and not have to do with a proportioning valve. So that's why we're going to go that way with it. As I mentioned in the last vlog video, might change out the front clip to a late 90s front clip so I can use some more modern headlights. That would be really nice as well. Those slightly more modern headlights will give more bulb options, better clarity. It'll sharpen the look of the truck up a little bit. It'll be fun. And then the last little bit that I'm going to do is some interior stuff. We already redid the headliner. That's not changing. At least I don't think I'm going to change it. We'll repaint all the vinyl trim back to a nice gray. And then we've got to do some dash repair. And I want to do a full-length center console. I want it to tie into the dashboard, look generally factory, and have some more modern features. But that's the plan for the Ranger as we get going. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. Sharps out.